TM, do you remember when we first met?
Oh, absolutely. We're standing right over there, and Roz was introducing us. And I remember she was saying, TM, do you know who this is? And I did not know it. I had no idea, but I heard in the importance of her voice that you must be somebody important, and I had no idea. And she was putting me on the spot and saying, TM, tell her who you are. And with my background, what I did in the past, at first I didn't really know what to say. So now you know about my past. So when I told you who I am and who I was in the past, what did you think at that first moment when I introduced myself?
I thought that it was really interesting that you were here in this place, surrounded by all of these images of the civil rights and that era in Memphis, Tennessee, that here was this neo-Nazi that was surrounded by all of this Black history, and really wondered what was probably going through your mind and your heart. So I think when you were here, were you shooting a documentary? Or was that
Yes.
later?
No, we were.
Was that day?
We were shooting something.
So
here,
how did you happen to be here shooting that documentary?
Well, I already had ties with the Civil Rights Museum here in Memphis, and I remember we were looking for things that were going on because I wanted to get involved into everything that's going on here in the Black community. So we worked a lot before, but I didn't have the connection to, let's say, the civil rights movement. So I actually did not know about Withers at all. I didn't know who Dr. Withers was. I had no idea that gallery was here. Because most people, when they come to Memphis, they only know about the Civil Rights Museum.
Yes.
And that little gem here is often just forgotten. There was actually a couple of contacts, made the connection, and I came here and I was just blown away. It's great. I mean, and you said that former neo-Nazi being here surrounded by all these images. And I was like, wow, I had no idea that many of these things existed. Like if you go to the sports section and you see the Negro Baseball League that existed in the 1940s and 50s, and then you have those racists telling their children that Black people had no achievements, and then you see that in the time of struggle in the 1940s and 50s, that those achievements were there. And wow, this is why I decided I'd bring people here too. Like, you know, around that exit program where I help people leaving hate groups. And this is one of the spots I love to bring them so they can learn.
Do they have the same kind of response that you had? Or what is their response?
Very often the same. And very often those people just got out of hate groups just prior to that. In my case, it was different. I left the hate groups in 2002. And I came here during MLK 50 week in 2018. That was 16 years later, and I just thought if it still has such an impact on me, 16 years after I left that last hate group I've been in and that I actually led, how important must it be to somebody who's just leaving a hate group, who just tries to explore that outside world, outside of the bubble they're living in, and actually realize, oh wow, what those people are telling me inside that bubble, it's a lie. And they can learn so much here, and I just love it that there's no finger pointing. It's just the history. It's just the photos. It's the pictures. They're telling the history.
Telling the story, which
and
is
you're
what...
like, it's like time traveling, and that's awesome.
Yeah, and that was what Mr. Withers wanted to happen. That's why he considered himself the picture taker. And that's what art allows the individual to do. It allows the individual, in my mind, to form their own idea about a certain time, people, activities. And it's not saying, you gotta believe this. It doesn't, nowhere in any of these images does it force you to think a specific, only one way about something. every person that comes into this museum has their own, they walk away with their own experience, which is what I think is so unique about the Withers collection in the first place. And the fact that Mr. Withers, I mean, it is one of my favorite places, and I love the National Civil Rights Museum. My father was on the board, so I saw it go through all of its incarnations. And when I talk to other people, I always say, well, the very first incarnation of the National Civil Rights Museum was the room 306 with Mr. Withers' images on the walls in that room. That was the first incarnation of it. So Mr. Withers is as much a part of that, but to have his own standalone place where people can actually come and have the experiences that they have, which is why as you walk throughout this gallery, you will see boxes of tissues in certain places. Because I remember when I first came because there was, I met Roz Withers at the Civil Rights Museum when they were screening the documentary, The Memphis 13, of which I was one of those 13 that helped to desegregate the white public school system here in Memphis in 1961. So I met her there, and that same voice, when she said, "Do you know who this is?" that said, okay, I need to take a moment and I need to invest in this conversation. She says to me, what are you doing after the documentary, after this session is over, because you really should go by and see what I'm doing with the Withers collection, and it's been on and popping ever since then, since 2011. And I came here, and then we went down to the archives. And when I walked into the archives, and mind you, I had been here when Mr. Withers Photoshop, you know, his space was in the back. So I had seen it, and so I knew what it looked like. And from what it was, when I came here, first of all, I could not believe it, because none of this was here. It was just the images around the wall, a red couch, these couple of chairs, and that was like, oh my goodness gracious. The back hadn't even been built out. The room that houses the Stax photos, that wasn't there. But when I walked, and it was gorgeous and it was beautiful, but when I walked into that archive, and I just saw all of these boxes, rooms.
So we met almost 1 year ago, almost to the day, here at Withers Collection Museum and Gallery. And 1 year later, we're traveling the country, spreading our message of unconditional love and compassion and empathy, going to places like New York City, where we spoke at the city council, at the city hall in New York City. I mean, that is great working with all those organizations like here, and then with the Simon Wiesenthal Center, with the NAACP, and also the Sheriff's Office in Bergen County, which is great. I mean, who would have thought how this develops in 1 year? I mean, I'm glad we connected and that we can actually travel this journey together. It's amazing with your background, with that past, with your experiences, like in the 60s, desegregating schools, then the experience with your father, being so closely connected to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. when he was assassinated 51 years ago. And I think it's moving when I hear you talk about that experience, because I know he was expected to come to dinner to your house.
Yes.
And he did not. And you told me that your mother woke you up the next morning and said, never talk about that, right? To suppress the pain. That is, I just wonder if was it in general in the time that you would do that and not talk about it? Or what do you think, what was the reason why your mother told you that?
Well, I think she told us that because my father was having nightmares, and I think that was her way of protecting him.
Okay. That is, I mean, I can't even imagine the pain that your father felt, because you were standing right next to him, and and actually hurried there to see what he can do, and realized everything was full of blood, and this tie that was upside down and everything. It leaves him speechless.
Yeah.
I mean, wow.
Yeah. I love the fact that that we met here and that we went to New York. You came to New York. I've been in New York for like 36 years now, and I have been down to City Hall, supporting friends and certain movements, but never sitting personally with any of the members of the New York City Council in City Hall. And it was so special for me to be there with people from Memphis, because no matter when people ask me, where are you from? I've lived in New York for 36 years, but I always say I'm from Memphis, but I live in New York City. Occasionally, there have been a couple of times that I'll be like, oh, I'm from New York, but even when I've done it then, it doesn't even sound right. So I think what has really made it so special was to be there, and I think I said that to the council, to be there sitting with 14 of the New York City Council members
And lawmakers,
and lawmakers with people from Memphis, Tennessee, people living in Memphis, Tennessee.
That is very interesting, because in my case it's different again. Like our past is different.
Right.
But I was born and raised in Germany and moved here to the Memphis metro area in 2012. And I live in the metro area. I actually live in North Mississippi.
Yeah.
Just 20 minutes from downtown Memphis. But even though it's the other way around, when I go to New York and somebody asks me, where are you from? I will say as well, I'm from Memphis.
From Memphis.
Because this is where I live. This is what I identify with. I consider myself a Memphian, because in my journey here in Memphis, I just realized how important it is to my work, not only with my exit program, also as a human rights activist, as a motivational speaker, and so on, how important it is with that historical significance that this city has. And I said, if I start my movement somewhere, where could it be better than Memphis?
Where?
Period. And this is why I'm a Memphian.
Precisely. I'm so excited for the work that we will be doing together moving forward, to have the opportunity to show two sides of a coin and the pain on both sides of that coin, and to be able to merge on this journey fueled by empathy, compassion, and unconditional love, which is our message.
Correct, because even though you talk to somebody who does not have the same political beliefs as you, that person still has valid reasons why they act how they act, why they think how they think, even though that those reasons, they're not valid to you or to me. But to them, their fears and concerns are very real, like the child that is afraid of the monster in the closet under their bed.
Right.
That monster's real to them, really real. But as a parent, you know it doesn't exist. What do you show your child? Will you call it out that they're stupid and biased and influenced by somebody? No. You will show unconditional love and compassion, right?
Precisely.
And this is exactly the same thing. If somebody doesn't agree with you and is completely on the opposite side, we have to look behind that facade. Those people are angry, and they channel their anger very often towards a certain group of people. And we see that happening right now in this country.
Oh my God.
We see it on the radical left, on the radical right, and they're bashing each other, and both sides are doing exactly the same. This is why we need that compassion so bad, not only in race relations, also in bipartisan relations, in human relations. This is why we do what we do.
And it's exciting. It's exciting. And as you were talking, what I was thinking about is why art institutions, galleries, museums, why they are so important. This is where we met.
It's a meeting point, too.
It is a meeting point where people can look at photographs of meaningful moments, and help to have their ideas shaped and perspectives shaped by what it is that they're seeing, not told that you've got to think this or it's got to be this way. So to be able to be here and to have this experience, and then, because inevitably, when there are people, there are conversations that are had. When people are looking at these images, think about that.
And also when they go home, they will have conversations about that.
What they saw.
They may be different. One person says, oh, this is what my daddy told me about, and they can see those photos. And some people, they have been told that none of this existed, and that it wasn't so bad for black people. And then all of a sudden, they see those photos. All the achievements, like the Negro Baseball League in the 1940s and 1950s, when a lot of white people were saying, oh, black people have no achievements. They're just living off white people's history and achievements. Then they see all that. They have a different perception of that. Go home and say, wow, I had no idea that this existed. And this is just what we need.
I agree. And it really, you know, even if they don't come full circle when they're looking at the images are in their minds. So that begins to give them the opportunity for a shift to happen. And that's why I'm loving the work that we will be doing together as we go across the nation, speaking on behalf of your experience and your history and my experiences and my history, but knowing that they align, because it is my firm belief that for us to be able to really have the conversations and to shift not only the narrative, but to shift how we humans treat each other, it's going to come from the heart. It's going to come from an expansion in the heart through love, empathy, and compassion.
That's it.